Welcome to the Third House podcast. I'm Erica, your host, and together we'll unravel the astrological and psychological tapestry that shapes our lives. Join me on this exploration towards our deepest potential and authentic selves. I can't wait to connect on our journey of self-discovery, so let's dive in. We've made it to April. I can't tell you how many times I look at the charts every day, 7 days a week, 365, no joke. And I remember looking at April of 2025 back in maybe mid 2024, thinking to myself, wow, I think April is really going to be the start of this new wave of energy in 2025, where I think we're really going to start to see not only that forward momentum, but really start to maybe feel or see things in a much more external way. So if you're listening to this at the end of March, March is wild. March is setting the stage for April. And for some of us, there will be a lot of change, new direction, depending on where things are happening in your chart, really things amplifying for some of you in career, home and family, partnership, the self. There's so many things shifting and changing and setting the stage in March that, astrology aside, could really feel uncomfortable. I think March and April could feel new and exciting, but also very uncomfortable for a lot of us. So I'm right there with you. I am recording this in early February. So I'm sort of seeing the things unfold, and I'm right there with you. I'm feeling it. I'm already kind of paying attention to the particular areas that the eclipse might shift and change for me and my family. And I'm really excited to see how the details involving the forward movement and alignment that I think is really possible for many of us in April of 2025. We have, Venus becoming a morning star the end of March, reaching its maximum brightness in April. We have Venus going direct and then applying to a conjunction with the North Node. So we have, Venus going direct, forward movement, going towards that North Node, increase, direction, alignment, desire, what we're hungry for. We have Mercury stationing direct, applying to the North Node. Again, Mercury moving direct. What's maybe delayed, what's maybe held back, what we had to review and revise. And again, if you're new to astrology and you don't know the lingo, don't worry. I'm going to go through each rising sign and I'll break down the areas of your chart that could be sort of influenced, and you could really start to see that direct forward movement where the North Node is involved. And again, this doesn't happen really. I can't remember the last time these personal planets retrograded and went direct, conjunct the North Node. So it's not, it happens, but it's not really a common thing. So I think 2025, there is this sort of individual personal element of what do we want to do? How do we align ourselves? What revisionary period can we really take advantage of to kind of release the outdated patterns, the cycles, move into a new cycle, especially with Venus entering a new 18-month cycle and potentially involving those Venus ruled areas of your chart. Again, I'll go into the details of that if you have no idea what I'm talking about. So there's a lot of, to me, what looks like not only forward movement, but really the desire to align and go after the things we really want in this new chapter of our lives. We also have Saturn going conjunct the North Node. So, this is potentially going to amplify the Saturnian areas of your chart, what Saturn rules in your chart. And, this again takes a long time to happen. So this, to me, whatever you're, I'm not the fear monger. A lot of ancient astrology, it was tough times back then. There was a lot of bad stuff people had to endure that in modern times we don't have to. And so some of these interpretations, in my opinion, are a little outdated. So I think, we also have the opportunity to work with Saturn. If you've been listening to my recent podcast episodes, I talk about the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. Where can we really start to take down some of those brick walls that are blocking the potential and possibilities in our lives? Where Saturn conjunct the North Node, again, this point of increase, desire, alignment, direction. How can we sort of restructure and start formulating that foundation to build that vision that we want to make a tangible reality? So there is just, March is like wild. Honestly, eclipses, very unpredictable. April's just juicy. There's just a lot going on. There's a lot moving forward. There is, I'm liking it. Venus is a morning star. We get a new 18-month cycle with her. So I think a lot of us are going to be stepping into a phase where we're over the past, we're over the previous chapter, and we're ready to go. We're ready to take off. So let's get into April of 2025. Hello, Aries risings. I'm going to jump to April 7th when Mercury goes direct at 26 degrees Pisces. So this direct movement is happening in your Pisces 12th house of subconscious thought patterns, life vision, sort of, where we seek rest, solitude, meditation. The lower vibrational aspect of this house, in my opinion, would be sort of like the limiting beliefs, where we self-sabotage ourselves mentally. So with Mercury going direct, we have Mercury ruling your third house of communication, really, especially if you work in communicative fields. So, writing, podcasts, speaking. I would even put sort of like marketing, public relations, anything where you're sort of like social events, exchanging information, things within your familiar environment as well. So that includes things within your familiar environment, like your phone, your car, your laptop, as well as people. So neighbors, siblings, extended family, those kinds of things. Mercury also rules your Virgo 6th house of daily work, health, and routines. So with Mercury stationing direct, we have a lot on the table, but some areas that I would particularly pay attention to would be sort of any health situation playing out, any sort of health and wellness plans, desires. Maybe you're trying to get to the bottom of, a health situation. Especially with the third house, sort of appointments, errands, those kinds of things revolved around your health. This could also have to do with forward movements and plans regarding sort of your mental vision regarding your work and how you want to put that out in the world, if that's applicable to you. But with Mercury going direct, I think things just on a general day-to-day basis could start to feel, especially if you have, again, this is not conclusive, you got to look at your natal placements. But if you have Mercury direct in your natal chart, this could really signal that familiar day-to-day environment, people, places, things within that familiar environment, sort of moving forward and sort of getting back to normal. So sort of daily commute, communication, things going on in your daily neighborhood. So what comes to mind is I actually have, I know quite a bit of Aries rising individuals living in California that were deeply affected by the wildfires. So, for them specifically being Aries risings, I have my eye on this. Maybe their appointments where they ran errands sort of starts to not necessarily come back to normal, but a new normal. Maybe they're able to go to their appointments, run their, typical errands. Maybe some grocery stores kind of come back online. And just sort of day-to-day life maybe becomes a new normal, but there's certain aspects of that where they can start to sort of have some sense of normalcy, as an example. So it could just be a very mundane, day-to-day familiar environment, or it could be a situation where, your daily work routines, any health, wellness themes start to move forward. Now, when Mercury stations direct, it's going to immediately apply to a conjunction with the North Node. So based off of degrees and cycles, what was going on the last week of February, first week of March regarding, what's going on mentally, what's going on with work, health, daily, day-to-day life. And that now for many of you, especially if you have Mercury direct in your natal chart, can start to feel like, maybe it's a mental relief. We did it. I can sort of move my plans forward with work or health. Maybe it's organizing your daily environment, sort of getting back to some sense of normalcy for some of you. Then on April 12th, we have the full moon in Libra at 23 degrees. Now, what's interesting about the 12th, now I'm looking at the times in Eastern Standard Time here in the United States. So this might be, a little bit before or maybe even into the next day, depending on where you are in the world. But April 12th, we have the full moon in Libra, and this lands in your 7th house of personal and professional partnerships. Now, the ruler of this full moon, Venus, will actually station direct about 40 minutes later. I think that's very significant. So I typically don't always talk about full moons and new moons, but this one, Venus has been retrograde for some time. Venus then goes direct on the 12th or 13th, depending on where you are in the world, and is now a morning star. So we're now having, for you as an Aries rising, this might be a new 18-month cycle involving your finances, your gifts, your talents, your self-worth, your approach to personal and professional partnerships. But there's an element of sort of this culminating moment highlighting the 1st house of self and the 7th house of the other. So definitely some sort of new chapter involving finances, self-worth, partnership, but where this full moon might sort of close out that previous chapter and allow you to step into a new chapter of sort of balancing your needs versus the needs of others, and hopefully stepping into a more financially abundant future, or abundant future regarding, your own gifts, talents, and self-worth. Now, April 16th, Mercury, like I mentioned, has been direct, now enters your Aries 1st house. This honestly might feel a lot better for Aries risings, because Mercury in Pisces can be, Mercury communicates and interacts in a very different way in Pisces, especially the 12th house, which is a very hidden house, kind of behind the scenes. Now Mercury becomes visible to you as an Aries rising, and it enters a fire sign. So Mercury rules that Gemini third house of communication, as well as that Virgo sixth house of daily work, health, and routines. So in terms of work, health, being able to communicate with the world and your familiar environment might start to feel more familiar. It might start to feel like you have more fire and fuel behind those themes. Then sorry, I'm doing this on the fly. I don't edit. So then on April 18th, Mars enters your Leo fifth house. I like this. I like this a lot for Aries risings. Mars has been, I'm recording it when we're in it right now, but Mars has been retrograde. Mars is your ruling planet. It rules your body, your ability to take independent action. It's your personal planet, and it was retrograde in your fourth house of home, family, property, and real estate. So maybe home, property, people you live with, things within your home, deliberation over renovations, property, real estate, especially, regarding the finances involved with that could have been, reviewed, revised. What is the plan of action? What is the core desire and motivation? And for some of you, there could have been sort of conflict, especially, talking about Mars, and it squares your first house of self. So there could have been tension, and, whatever was unfolding quite literally could have required you and even the close partnerships in your life to take action, but in a very maybe unfamiliar way. Now on April 18th, Mars enters your Leo fifth house. It gets out of that fourth house. Some of you, this could be just like the deep breath, like where the plan of action, like getting back to maybe even some sense of normalcy, where Mars in Leo is very different from a Mars in Cancer. Mars in Cancer, the best analogy that I can give, or what it feels like, and again, this is from my perspective as a Leo rising, which is a fire rising sign. Mars in Cancer feels like, instead of running on land, it feels like running in water. And some people who have Mars in Cancer natal, or have positive aspects to Mars in Cancer, might feel like, I like being in water. I like how it feels. I like how I can move. Mars in Cancer moves differently. It's swimming. Maybe it's swaying, from side to side. If you're talking about Cancer representing the crab, the crab doesn't walk linear, right? Mars in especially in fire signs, or even Aries or Scorpio, especially in Scorpio where it has precision and, accuracy, likes to move forward. It likes to move linear, like point A to point B. Mars in Cancer is like, well, maybe I'm going to sway over here. Maybe I'm going to sway over here. I'm going to kind of like, walk side to side, like the crab representing Cancer. So when Mars moves into Leo, I think the action for a lot of you can start to feel more linear. Okay. We've deliberated, we've reviewed, revised, maybe the core motivations, the core desires around, who I want to be, what's really going to support me, what's really going to support the foundation of my life, what's happened in the foundation of your life. And now you can sort of maybe, hopefully, start to feel like I can move from point A to B, and I can start really initiating and putting literally the fire behind the plan, the desire, and the motivation. Also keep in mind that when Mars enters your 5th house, it's no longer going to be in a square configuration to your 1st house of self. So it will move into a trine configuration. This is very important for Aries risings because a trine configuration typically means that obstacles will dissolve. So I'm hoping that the obstacles that many of you have had to endure or sort of, slow down, go over, have to reconsider, those obstacles and problems will start to dissolve and things will start to create more action in a very natural, unfolding kind of way. And the areas where those obstacles can start to dissolve would be the areas of really what is going to support you, your creativity, your self-expression, your children, romance, and how is that going to also sort of support your physical body, your ability to take independent action, and also your growth and potential. One thing to keep in mind is that when Mars enters Leo, it will also form an opposition with Pluto. So it's going to start to apply to an opposition with Pluto. Now, this is nothing new. We've kind of had a few oppositions with Pluto, but now Mars is direct, applying to that opposition with Pluto. So Mars ruled areas such as you, your physical body, as well as your 8th house of transformation and resources, including a partner's resources, could come into the picture in terms of there could be a social network or a long-term goal, dreams, aspirations that you're really desiring to transform and create more empowerment that might require you to create balance with the resources available to you, as well as, what's also going to support you, your ability to take independent action, and maybe even balancing that with, personal and professional partnerships. I'm not going to lie, the Mars-Pluto opposition for that brief period of time might create some intensity. Now, for some of you, that intensity might be, I'm fed up. I want to get this plan of action going. I want to feel supported in the world. I want to really focus on expanding my resources and any transformational work. And that opposition might be like, well, it's like a seesaw. You got to, it requires some analysis of how are we going to balance sort of what's really going to support you and bring you more joy in your life, but also set you up for success for transforming sort of your social network, who you want to surround yourselves with, and those long-term goals. On April 21st, Saturn will go conjunct the North Node in your Pisces 12th house of the subconscious, your life vision, your dreams. Pay attention to your dreams around this time. They might give you some contextual clues. But regardless, Saturn rules your 10th house of career, business, public recognition, as well as that 11th house of social network and your long-term goals. So to me, work, business, social network, and long-term goal visions could really start to amplify around this time. And I think for Aries risings, building that new foundation for many of you, I think really starts in the mind. Some other people, it might really start with other people. It might start with friends. It might start with, their creative projects. But I think for Aries risings, it's sort of like you're mentally constructing the foundation around this time. And there could also be an element of mental strength, like strengthening your mental power, your vision, your ability to mentally construct the plan of action regarding who you want to surround yourselves with, those long-term goals, career, business, and even public recognition. April 21st, there will be a new moon in Taurus at 7 degrees. This actually lands in your second house of earned income and self-worth. The second house is also what's technically yours, what you have ownership of, whether this is physical material possessions and what I like to call sort of like your innate gifts and talents. So I think this could really, whatever's playing out in April, the new moon in Taurus could really create new opportunities and new chapters around finances, self-worth. That is also playing into this larger story where many of you are sort of setting a new chapter, sort of mentally constructing, your next step. Also consider a few days after this new moon in your second house of earned income and self-worth, Venus will be at its maximum brightness. This is important because Venus rules your second house of earned income and self-worth. So whatever new chapter you're setting, it could be playing into this new 18-month cycle that many of you are really wanting to step into. But I think with Venus being at the maximum brightness, it's significant. It's really it's, I think, really the fuel or the brightness around initiating this new chapter around your financial goals, your budget, your self-worth, etc. And lastly, on April 30th, Venus enters Aries. So Venus will move out of its place of exaltation and it will enter its place of detriment. However, I know detriment is a big, scary word, but I think this might be a good thing. I think with everything playing out and the forward momentum sort of happening, this might actually provide some Aries risings the ability to really get clear in a very sort of embodied external way of this is what I love and value. This is what I want to align myself to. And this is how I'm going to fully be supported within personal and professional partnerships. I'm not going to lie, Venus in Aries is a little like I want what I want and I want it now. And that's not always a bad thing because when Venus is in rulership, it can be a little like, well, maybe I'll compromise or, and then in other signs, maybe it might feel like it can't win. So I think when you zoom out and you look at the full picture of April, I think Venus moving into Aries will sort of be welcomed for many of you. And again, this Venus will also start to trine any personal placements in your fifth house of creativity. So you stepping into and honoring what's really going to support you, your physical body, your ability to take independent action could consequently remove the obstacles to your growth and potential, creating more joy in your life, creativity, self-expression, and also incorporating romance into your lives if that is desired. I also think that Venus entering Aries, although it's in detriment, could really help diffuse any Mars-Pluto opposition problems, like I mentioned earlier in the month, by sort of, again, diffusing obstacles between your desire to step into more joy, more creativity, situations with children, romance, and also potentially creating opportunity to the area of friends, groups, communities, and long-term goals. Hello, Taurus risings. I'm going to jump to April 7th when Mercury stations direct at 26 degrees Pisces. So Mercury moving direct, especially if you have Mercury direct in your natal chart, could signal the sort of conclusive or forward momentum around your social network, long-term goals. But more specifically, Mercury rules your Gemini second house of earned income and self-worth, as well as your Virgo fifth house of creativity, self-expression, romance, joy, children, if applicable to you. So this could signal sort of the forward momentum, maybe around, your resources, your finances, as well as any sort of creative pursuits or situations playing out with your children. Again, maybe some of you might start to feel more aligned and centered with your creativity or self-expression. So I'm hoping that this Mercury stationing direct, especially because it's going to immediately apply to a conjunction with the North Node in that 11th house of friends, groups, communities, and long-term goals, will start to hopefully create the forward movement and also hopefully the alignment financially, creatively, even, just feeling more joyful, more hopeful towards the social network and the long-term goals. April 12th, we have a full moon in Libra at 23 degrees. This full moon will be illuminating, culminating a situation with work, health, daily routines. So maybe your work, a health situation, or just your general daily routines will start to maybe shift, culminate, change. What's interesting is, depending on where you are in the world, I use Eastern Standard Time. But when this full moon goes exact by degree, about 40 minutes later, Venus will station direct. Now, Venus rules the full moon in rulership in this Libra 6th house of yours. So I find that quite significant because whatever is culminating sort of around the daily work, the health, or routines is also potentially playing into sort of maybe forward plans, movements, things that you've had to sort of review and revise regarding that area, as well as, yourself, who you are, how you want to show up in the world. So I'm hoping that in terms of maybe health, work, routines, the self starts to align in terms of goals, people you want to surround yourselves with, etc. April 16th, Mercury then enters your Aries 12th house. So some of you, this might give you a lot of mental power. Mercury in a fire sign is very different from a Mercury in water. So I think mentally you might start to really gain more mental power. Mercury is a planet of communication, all forms of communication, even commerce. Now, Mercury rules that 5th house of joy, creativity, as well as your 2nd house of earned income and self-worth. So I think this could signal, maybe some of you are getting new ideas regarding creative pursuits, those kinds of things, or sort of getting new ideas and really thinking about new ways of handling finances or new ways to make money, or sort of mentally starting to step into new mental patterns around self-worth. April 18th, Mars enters Leo. Now, Mars is going to enter your Leo 4th house of home, family, property, and real estate. So this could be, Mars retrograded this area, I believe, back in like December, early January-ish, off the top of my head. So Mars being direct, re-entering that Leo 4th house of home, family, property, and real estate could tie up loose ends regarding a long story playing out there. But I think Mars in Leo is going to create a bit more action in your lives because it's going to start to square your 1st house of self, your 7th house of partnership, and sort of create an opposition with Pluto in your 10th house of career and public recognition. So Mars rules the 7th house of personal and professional partnership, as well as your 12th house of sort of subconscious thought patterns, life vision, dreams. And so I think there is maybe wanting to take action around, home, family, close partnerships, maybe with the 12th house tie, wanting to be home, rest, recharge, but then also try to balance that with this, potentially an intensity sort of building where you're like, well, I really need to balance that with the transformation and sort of like stepping into the empowerment that I really want in my career, my business, my public recognition. So I think this might be sort of, a build or an intensity around balancing home and family with work and career, where maybe you really want to take action around, attending to the home, being with your close partnerships, um, having more time to yourself or, rest and recharge. But maybe the career or the career sector of your chart is really changing and demanding a lot more from you around this time. It will be brief, this opposition, so you might feel it a little bit in April, but it will start to separate and move on. April 21st, Saturn will be conjunct the North Node in your Pisces 11th house. So again, this could really start to amplify 11th house themes of social network, dreams, long-term goals. But Saturn rules that 9th house of growth and potential and your 10th house of career and public recognition. So I actually think that this might really start to amplify a new foundation regarding growth and potential in your lives, whatever you do for growth and potential. Now, if you have your midheaven in your Capricorn 9th house, this might have to do with higher knowledge, teaching, publishing, spirituality, travel, regarding work. So either way, I think the majority of you, whether you have your midheaven, in your 9th or your 10th or even your 11th, this has a lot of career and public recognition themes on it. And with Saturn, it could be sort of this, building a building and intensifying this new foundation around maybe new long-term goals regarding a change in foundation regarding career growth and potential. Again, on April 21st, we have a new moon in your Taurus first house of self at 7 degrees. So this could really also signify that whatever's transpiring throughout April could also help you step into a new chapter regarding yourself, your appearance, your identity, how you really want to show up in the world. Again, around this new moon, a few days later, I believe on the 24th, Venus will gain its maximum brightness. So Venus will be at its brightest point in the sky as a morning star, again, initiating that new 18-month cycle around maybe yourself, how you want to show up in the world, as well as any work, health, or routine themes. So this new moon, I think, has a little extra juice behind it, particularly for Taurus risings, because Venus is your ruling planet and it will be at its maximum brightness around this new moon, sort of helping you initiate a new sense of self and a new way of taking action in the world. And lastly, on April 30th, Venus enters your Aries 12th house of the subconscious thought patterns, life vision, dreams. Again, this might really start to amplify sort of your mental thought patterns around your work, your routines, and the self. So you might have a lot on your mind regarding, your appearance, how you want to show up in the world. Maybe some of you are sort of stepping into a new sense of self, or new like parts of your identity are sort of changing, and you're sort of mentally acclimating yourself to that, or mentally acclimating yourself to new health and or work routines. Hello, Gemini rising. I'm going to jump to April 7th when Mercury, your ruling planet, stations direct at 26 degrees Pisces. So Mercury, it rules you, your physical body, your appearance, and it is stationing direct. It is moving forward in the area of career and public recognition. This is significant because not only does Mercury rule you, the self, it also rules your fourth house of home, family, property, and real estate. So some of you might be sort of seeing amplifying themes around career, social status, public recognition that really have you weighing in, its alignment to you, the self, your identity, how you want to show up in the world, and or a home, family, property, real estate situation playing out for some of you. Mercury will, when it stations direct in this area of career and public recognition, it will start to apply to a conjunction with the North Node. So some of you might be able to think back to the last week of February, first week of March regarding this area, whether it's home, family, career, or the self, and sort of where can this signal that forward movement around that story that's playing out for some of you. On April 12th, there will be a full moon in your Libra fifth house of joy at 23 degrees. So fifth house includes, really where we intimately experience joy. So this could be through romantic situations, children, creativity, self-expression. And this full moon is really highlighting, it's culminating something regarding fifth house themes, maybe your relationship with joy, maybe, changing or stepping into a new chapter regarding, what feels more aligned and joyful for you in your lives, whether that's through, your creativity, your self-expression, romance, or children. Now I'm looking at this in Eastern Standard Time. So this might happen, on the 13th for you. But from my perspective on April 12th, it's full moon by degree happens. And 40 minutes later, Venus, the ruler of this full moon, stations direct in your 10th house of career. So this changes it a little bit because for me, as I am interpreting this, it sort of signals, yes, maybe something's culminating around, a relationship with joy, creativity, self-expression, those themes that I mentioned. But because the ruler of this full moon is stationing direct, literally 40 minutes later, which is very significant, in your 10th house of career, I have to sort of look at it and say, what new phase or new chapter are many of you sort of desiring or sort of moving towards where you can incorporate more creativity, more self-expression, or joy in what you do in the world? Or just sort of, for some of you, it may not be work-related. It could just be your social status or your public recognition. Regardless, how can you step into more joy, creativity, self-expression regarding what you do in the world or how you are visible in the world? And then on April 16th, Mercury enters your Aries 11th house. This might feel a little bit better, even work-related, because Mercury has a little bit more fire, a little bit more get up and go in terms of communication and even commerce in terms of what it rules. But Mercury is your ruling planet, and it will start to form an aspect to your first house of self, where that is the area that Mercury rules. So this might feel a little bit better, a little bit more ease, or even opportunity to, focus on the self, focus on, your needs. But this could also signal sort of, yes, focusing on the self, maybe even focusing on home, family, property, real estate themes, and how that's really going to serve and be integrated with your social network, who you surround yourselves with, and those long-term goals. Then on April 18th, Mars enters your Leo third house of communication, your day-to-day environment, your familiar environment, and all the things within your familiar environment. So this could be your neighbors, your siblings, your extended family, your phone, car, laptop, all those day-to-day things, as well as anything to do with communication, especially if you work in any communicative type fields. So with Mars entering Leo, it's finally left your second house of earned income and self-worth, which for many of you might feel a bit better, to be honest. And this could really start to heat up the action in your everyday familiar environment. But it's going to start to apply to an opposition with Pluto in that ninth house of growth and potential. So this could sort of create some intensity for a brief period of time in April, where some of you are really looking to sort of transform and empower any growth and potential you really desire in your lives. Maybe it's related to career for some of you, and having to balance the necessary action and sort of busyness that might be happening in sort of your immediate day-to-day environment or sort of immediate mundane needs. So just be aware of that. You might feel pulled in those two directions and look for some balance. Now, that Mars rules your sixth house of daily work, health, and routines, as well as your 11th house of social network and long-term goals. So this might be sort of a tug of war between, well, I really want to transform and empower sort of the growth and potential in my life, but the daily health, work, social demands of my daily life are, could be a lot right now. So going into April, I would just, take care of the errands, the mundane tasks, the paperwork, the appointments, whatever you can do to sort of lessen any intensity around having to take care of just daily work, daily routines, catching up with these people, focusing on the long-term goals. So you can sort of minimize any intensity around this time. Then on April 21st, we have Saturn conjunct the North Node in your Pisces 10th house of career and public recognition. I think for a lot of Gemini risings, this might be the point where you can really start to see how much hard work many of you have been enduring for some time with Saturn going through the 10th. And Saturn rules your Capricorn 8th house of transformation and resources, as well as that Aquarius 9th house of growth and potential. So maybe it's travel, higher knowledge, spirituality, teaching, publishing that might be related to work for some of you that could be amplifying around this time. Regardless, I think this could be an opportunity for some of you to strengthen the career foundation or sort of restructure the career foundation to fully support the growth and potential you really want in your lives, as well as the transformation and resources you want to be able to tap into for maybe long-term financial success as well. Again, on April 21st, we have a new moon in your Taurus 12th house at 7 degrees. So this new moon could potentially be creating a new opportunity around your life vision, your subconscious thought patterns, your dreams. So maybe a lot is sort of changing with career or with growth and potential or your daily environment or even just yourselves. And this new moon kind of comes along and it can sort of help provide an opportunity to create a new vision based off of maybe this new chapter for some of you. All in all, I think this could be a wonderful opportunity to sort of plant new seeds regarding the life vision or the subconscious thought patterns you really want to amplify and step into that can sort of fertilize the life you want to take place in 2025. Then on April 30th, Venus enters your Aries 11th house of friends, groups, communities, and long-term goals. Venus rules that 5th house of joy, as well as your 12th house of that subconscious thought patterns, your life vision. So Venus entering Aries, yes, it's in detriment. Yes, it's a I want what I want and I want it now kind of Aries or Libra Aries type energy. But I think this could help a lot of Gemini risings sort of initiate and sort of step into, yes, this is my life vision. These are my goals, my dreams, my aspirations. These are the people I want to surround myself with. And I deserve joy. I deserve more creativity and self-expression in my life. A lot of you have worked really hard, again, with Saturn in a very visible area of your chart, and especially with the Mars retrograde in your second house of earned income. And I think this could be the time where you kind of set yourself, you get the fire behind you to say what you want and own it, and confidently go after your creativity, your self-expression, integrating more joy in your life, and communicating your true dreams, aspirations, and long-term goals. Hello, Cancer risings. I'm going to jump to April 7th when Mercury stations direct at 26 degrees in your Pisces 9th house. Now, the 9th house of growth and potential, but what do I mean by that? Really higher knowledge, spirituality, long distance travel, as well as publishing, teaching, really those things that we pursue in life to amplify more growth and potential. But before I really jump into this, I think it's important to know your natal chart if you have your midheaven in Pisces, because if you do, this will have likely more career and public recognition themes integrated with what I'm about to discuss. So with Mercury stationing direct here, this could create the forward movement, plan of action, even communication regarding sort of your day-to-day environment. And anything, especially if you work in communication fields or you're doing something for communication. So podcast, apps, technology, social media, those kinds of things, or even just sort of working within familiar environments. So like transportation, errands, appointments, those kinds of things. So this could really kind of create the forward plan and movement around that area, as well as any subconscious thoughts, sort of life vision that could be playing into not only your growth and potential, but sort of your overall approach to growth and potential in your life. So some of you might be taking those intangible thoughts around your life vision and using your communication and voice to sort of start moving into the growth and potential you want to take in 2025 here. April 12th, there will be a full moon in your Libra 4th house of home, family, property, and real estate. Now, depending on where you are in the world, this might happen April 13th, but regardless, this full moon is illuminating, culminating something involving your home, people you live with, property, real estate, where 40 minutes later, after this full moon culminates by degree, Venus, the ruler of this full moon, will station direct in that Pisces 9th house of growth and potential. So there could be relationships with family, again, anything to do with home, property, real estate themes, or people you live with, that could be sort of culminating. Maybe a chapter is closing where it's indicating the forward movement around choosing growth and potential. So whatever's going on foundationally in your life, you might start to become very clear around what you love and value. You might become very clear around sort of the direction you want to take in terms of the foundation necessary that's going to fully support the growth and potential or even career that you want to create or step into. Then on April 16th, Mercury enters your Aries 10th house of career, business, and public recognition. This might sort of create more fire behind communication and commerce, particularly because Mercury rules your 3rd house of communication, familiar environment, as well as your 12th house of subconscious thought patterns, dreams, life vision. So in terms of regarding Mercury moving into the area of career and public recognition, this could really help some of you sort of communicate and sort of take those intangible ideas or thoughts or visions and start to really sort of communicate and integrate them within your career projects, and even public recognition. Then on April 18th, Mars enters Leo. This is your second house of earned income and self-worth. So Mars rules your 10th house of career and public recognition. And when it enters Leo, it's going to start to trine your 10th house of career and public recognition. So some of you might be sort of investing or spending money on your business, or your money might sort of increase your income. So a lot of times when Mars, generally speaking, when Mars goes through your second house, you could be earning or making more money, but you could also be spending more money around this time. It's important to note too that when Mars enters Leo, it's going to start to apply to an opposition with Pluto in your 8th house of transformation and resources. So some of you might really be focusing on maybe transforming and empowering yourselves through your transformational work, but you could also be sort of stepping into transformation and empowerment regarding your resources, including financial resources. But with the Mars opposition, this could sort of create some intensity or need for balance around what you maybe want to spend on your social status, your public recognition, your career, as well as any creative projects, maybe childcare needs, as well as just self-expression, romance, and joy. So some of you might be feeling kind of pulled in terms of like want to take action around, spending money and investing in, my career, my public recognition, as well as sort of my self-expression and enjoying life. But how do I balance that intensity with the ability to transform and empower my long-term financial goals, my resources, and even transformational work along the way? Then on April 21st, Saturn will be conjunct the North Node in your Pisces 9th house. Again, growth potential. So higher knowledge, spirituality, travel, publishing, teaching, etc. So this could really start to amplify maybe the strengthening or the restructuring of the foundation regarding maybe career, growth, potential themes. Now, Saturn rules your 7th house of personal and professional partnerships, as well as that 8th house of transformational work and resources. So this could signal sort of, okay, maybe a new foundation or the strengthening of a foundation that's going to fully support your growth and potential and career for some of you by tapping into or integrating personal and professional partnerships, as well as resources that are going to play a part in that strengthening or restructuring of that foundation that's going to fully support the growth and potential as well as career for some of you in your lives. Then on April 21st, again, we have this new moon in your Taurus 11th house at 7 degrees. So while all of this is going on, there's an opportunity to create a new chapter around your social network. Especially if you work with the public, this could be a new chapter regarding how you maybe relate or interact with the public or the masses, as well as establishing any new chapters around dreams, aspirations, and long-term goals. It's also interesting around this time, a few days later after this new moon, Venus will technically be at its maximum brightness. Venus rules that 11th house of friends, groups, communities, and long-term goals that this new moon is taking place in. So I think, setting those intentions, creating new chapters and opportunities around who you really want to surround yourselves with and the dreams, long-term goals that you really want to unfold in 2025 where it's also playing into a larger 18-month cycle. And lastly, on April 30th, Venus enters your Aries 10th house of career and public recognition. So this could start to integrate your social network and your long-term goals, as well as your foundation, your living environment, people you live with, home, family, property, and real estate, and sort of how that's playing into the career, business, or public recognition that you're really seeking in 2025. So this could be a good time to sort of move into May regarding, establishing that Venus in Aries energy, which is very, I want what I want and I want it now. Around, yes, it's coming together in the area of career, business, and public recognition. But I think this is where a lot of you can sort of step into a more unapologetic energy around knowing who you need to surround yourselves with, getting very clear on your long-term goals and the proper home, family, sort of sacred foundational environment you need to support what you really desire regarding your public recognition, career, and or business. Hello, Leo risings. On April 7th, Mercury finally stations direct at 26 degrees Pisces. So Mercury is stationing direct and then immediately applying to a conjunction to that North Node regarding the area of transformation, any transformational work, resources, including a partner's resources. So really like long-term financial management, assets, investments, payouts. So what's particularly interesting about this is Mercury rules your second house of earned income. So this has a lot of financial themes written all over it, as well as transformational work and sort of stepping into self-worth and how that ultimately can, stepping into our self-worth, stepping into the transformational work can help us put our financial goals into perspective, right? So I think Mercury stationing direct can really help put the financial goals, the transformational work goals, that also with Mercury's rulership over your 11th house of friends, groups, communities, and long-term goals. Although this is happening in financial houses, I think this also could really help sort of create the forward momentum needed to establish surrounding yourselves with the right people, maybe getting out there, aligning yourselves to sort of the dreams, the goals that could have sort of more of a financial alignment or resource alignment. Then on April 12th, there will be a full moon in your Libra third house. This full moon will be at 23 degrees. And when it goes exact by degree, 40 minutes later, the ruler of this full moon, Venus, will go direct. So there's a lot to unpack here. We have this culmination, this closing, this, illumination around your everyday environment, your communication, exchanging information, people, places, things within your immediate environment, including like siblings, extended family, neighbors, your phone, car, laptop. So this could be sort of taking care of paperwork, appointments, errands, sort of organizing your familiar everyday environment. This could really culminate a situation within your familiar environment. Or, if you're attending a social event or doing any short distance travel, this could sort of culminate that. But again, 40 minutes after this full moon goes exact, the ruler, Venus, goes direct in your Pisces 8th house. So we also have to consider the area of your chart ruling career and public recognition, because Venus also rules that area. So Venus goes direct in your 8th house. Maybe there's forward momentum. Maybe there's clarity around what you really love and value, regarding your familiar environment, your everyday lives. What do you want to surround yourselves with or communicate? Or if you work in communicative type fields, what could be gaining forward momentum around that, where it could also be sort of creating potential forward movement around career, business, public recognition that could consequently help you get very clear on your financial future, as well as partners' resources, if that's applicable, and how they sort of play into that financial future or that new sort of Venus cycle that I talked about, where, it's a new 18-month cycle that you could be sort of really initiating around career and everyday environment, how you want to feel in that everyday environment, and how that can sort of set the stage for your financial future and your resources. Then on April 16th, Mercury enters your Aries 9th house of growth and potential. So anything to do with increasing your growth and potential. This could be higher knowledge, travel, spirituality, teaching, publishing. But again, Mercury rules that second house of earned income, as well as your 11th house of social network and long-term goals. So this tells me that there could be more fire. There could be more action and momentum around, yes, communication and even commerce, if that's applicable to you, but really sort of more fire behind, investing in your growth and potential, investing in spending time with friends, investing in that growth and potential that is going to fully support and create opportunities to those long-term goals you may have. Then on April 18th, Mars enters your Leo first house of self. This is probably going to be a welcomed energy for many Leo risings. Mars has been hanging out, unpacking, overstaying its welcome in your Cancer 12th house of the subconscious, dreams, even where you limit yourself, you self-sabotage yourselves. So a lot of Leo risings have probably gone through, yes, a revisionary period around the growth and potential you want, the home, family, property, real estate, or just that foundational part of your life that is going to really support you in the direction you want to take in your life. But it has probably required many of you to sort of untangle a lot of subconscious thought patterns, which can be very uncomfortable. When Mars ingresses into your Leo first house on April 18th, this is where you might really start to feel the fire behind showing up in the world, having more desire and motivation to take care of your physical body, your appearance, sort of really step into that, that fire energy, which, like I said, could be very welcomed after maybe many months of, depending on your natal placements. Some of you might been sort of maybe even reclusive, or really just like going inward and feeling not like yourselves. So Mars entering Leo, welcomed energy. However, Mars will start to apply to a brief opposition with Pluto in your Aquarius 7th house of personal and professional partnerships, including marriage. So you might start to get the fire behind you, especially regarding any growth and potential areas of life, in addition to home and family, property, real estate themes, where you might be feeling torn, where it's like, okay, I want to invest in myself. I want to feel good. I want to show up in the world. I want to really sort of take advantage of any dissolution of obstacles regarding going after my growth and potential, anything that feels like growth and potential in your lives. Maybe some of you are taking action or creating necessary changes to the home family sector of your chart to feel stronger, to feel more vitality. But it's going to probably require a brief balance involving the transformation and empowerment you really desire in your close partnerships or the partnership you want to attract. So there could be something playing out with, personal and or professional partnerships. That's sort of this opportunity for maybe transformation or empowerment, or maybe some of you have been working with those themes for some time. And it's sort of like, okay, well, how do I integrate and balance that with how I really want to show up in the world, the growth and potential I'm really seeking, the home, family, property, real estate foundation I really desire. So there could just be a brief moment of intensity between trying to sort of balance or integrate those two worlds, you versus the other. Then on April 21st, Saturn will be conjunct the North Node in that Pisces 8th house. This is where I think personal and professional partnerships could really start to amplify because that's what Saturn rules in your chart. So Saturn being conjunct the North Node, again, that point of increase, alignment, desire, what we're hungry for, in that 8th house of transformation and resources. So some of you might be really amplifying new foundations around your work, your health, your routines, new foundations around how you show up or desired personal and professional partnerships, and how that is sort of playing a part in strengthening or restructuring your ability to create the transformation and the resources, even long-term financial resources, or a stronger financial future for yourselves. Additionally, on April 21st, there will be a new moon in your Taurus 10th house of career and public recognition at 7 degrees. So this is also somehow tying into this new chapter regarding career and public recognition. Maybe some of you are looking at finances, looking at how you really want to step out physically into the world, the foundation that's fully going to support you, in addition to the health, partnerships that are really going to strengthen that foundation for the transformational, financial future that many of you are focused on. Like how do I set myself up for success? And this new moon comes along in the area of career and public recognition. It is an opportunity to sort of establish a new way of being, a new chapter, plant new seeds regarding your career, your business, your public recognition that could very well play into creating more, financial abundance, more, better personal and professional partnerships, increasing your vitality, your health, your routines as well. Then on April 30th, we're really sort of closing out the month with Venus entering your Aries 9th house of growth and potential. So again, think higher knowledge, spirituality, travel, publishing, teaching, any, theme that particularly resonates with you regarding the growth and potential you want in your lives. So Venus entering Aries, yes, it's in detriment, but I think this could be a welcomed energy, especially with Mars now in your first house, because at least by sign, eventually by degree, Venus and Mars will be trine between your first house of self and your 9th house of growth and potential. So Venus in Aries is a very I want what I want and I want it now type of energy. And this might help you get the get up and go to really focus on what you want in terms of that growth and potential, being able to communicate that but ultimately how it's going to fully support your career, your social status, your public recognition, and potentially dissolve or lessen any obstacles to how you want to shine, how you want to show up in the world, strengthen your physical body, take action, core desires and motivations around your identity, how you want to show up in the world, and how you want other people to view you. Hello, Virgo risings. On April 7th, Mercury stations direct in your Pisces 7th house of personal and professional partnerships, including marriage. So Mercury is your ruling planet. So this could feel very personal for Virgo risings, but it also rules your 10th house of career and public recognition. So there could be something playing out where there could be forward movement, forward communication, plans, etc., involving sort of your needs as well as career, public recognition, direction that could be playing a part in professional partnerships or the amplification of professional partnerships, as well as sort of working that out within personal partnerships. On April 12th, there will be the full moon in Libra. This is really amplifying, culminating your second house of earned income and self-worth. Now, when this full moon goes direct by degree, about 40 minutes later, the ruler of this full moon will station direct. This is very significant to me. So something's culminating financially. It could also be involving sort of your self-worth, especially maybe something's playing out within personal and professional partnerships where you're able to really see and step into your value and your self-worth. Or this could be something playing out financially that's culminating that could sort of also indicate that forward movement, Venus being direct in the area of personal and professional partnerships, immediately applying to the North Node, again, that point of desire, increase, what we're hungry for, even alignment. So something could be playing out with your own internal values, self-worth, even finances within a partnership, or being able to sort of move things forward regarding something that has happened or played out within the area of partnership, again, including marriage. Then on April 16th, Mercury enters your Aries 8th house. Now, Mercury is your ruling planet. It rules you, your physical body, appearance, self, how you show up in the world. And it is entering the area of transformational work as well as resources. So some of you might start to look into transformational work that really supports you on a visceral level. It could be, supporting your physical body, your physical health, as well as sort of investing in yourselves, right? Resources, we're talking about investments, assets. So some of you might quite literally be looking at your financial future, your investments, and how it's really fully supporting you and your personal needs. Then on April 18th, Mars enters your Leo 12th house of the subconscious, dreams, life vision. Generally speaking, Mars transiting the 12th house can sometimes cause what I like to call monkey mind. It can sort of create more action and fire to sort of your subconscious thought patterns. Some people even experience sort of insomnia, like it's very difficult to sleep. Again, it depends on your natal chart and any mitigating factors. But generally speaking, Mars is going to sort of start to kick up the heat and action regarding the more hidden aspects of your life. So, your mental subconscious thought patterns, your need for solitude, rest, recharge, what could be really amplifying or creating more mental action around your life visions, as well as how that potentially plays a part in, what's going on mentally that you might be able to sort of untangle that could sort of change or affect the way you communicate. It could change and affect the way you sort of invest. This honestly, if you're really diving into like transformational work, I think that this transit could actually be really valuable because Mars could sort of kick up the subconscious thoughts and the vision and, you know, the more hidden aspects of yourself. But it will be, at least by house, in a trine configuration to the 8th house of transformational work. So some of you might either individually or be working with someone else around sort of untangling any, you know, subconscious thought patterns or life vision that really doesn't serve you, doesn't really serve your financial future, it doesn't really serve your ability to sort of step into the life vision you may have for yourselves. So this could be more hidden. I don't think it's going to be very visible to the external world, but there could be a lot going on behind the scenes that starts to play out in April. It's important to know that when Mars enters this Leo 12th house of the subconscious, it's going to start to apply to an opposition with Pluto in your Aquarius 6th house of daily health, work, and routines. So this could really briefly bring an intensity around balancing the mind and the body. And some of you might be experiencing, you know, an intensity around, you know, wanting to transform your health, your vitality, your routines, your work. But there could also be this deep desire and motivation to have alone time, to rest, to recharge, to sort of untangle your thoughts that are sort of amping up during the day. So I think the intensity with this could come from maybe some of you are just very busy within your daily routines, your work, you know, taking care of yourselves and trying to find time to sort of sleep, rest, sort of stay on track mentally. On April 21st, Saturn will be conjunct the North Node in your Pisces 7th house of personal and professional partnerships. Now, Saturn's been going through your Pisces 7th house, creating a journey for some of you around sort of restructuring or trying to strengthen, you know, your long-term partnerships, whether they're personal or professional. Now, when Saturn goes conjunct the North Node, it could sort of amplify or increase the desire or just the natural amplification around maybe restructuring or strengthening the foundation, yes, in personal and professional partnerships, but in a way that can provide more joy, more pleasure, more creativity, self-expression, and also just everyday sort of health and overall vitality to those partnerships or the partnership you really desire. So I think for a lot of Virgo rising, something that could really start to amplify or come into light is like creating or strengthening that foundation that's going to provide you the partnerships that feel good, that support your, you know, your creativity, your self-expression, your health, your work, your routines, and vice versa. Additionally, on April 21st, there will be a new moon in your Taurus 9th house at 7 degrees. So as this is all sort of playing out in April, there is this new moon that comes along in the area of growth and potential for Virgo rising. So again, growth and potential. What do I mean? Could be higher knowledge, higher education, spirituality, long distance travel, publishing, teaching, really anything you're pursuing to increase that growth and potential in your lives. That this new moon can sort of help you create a new chapter, can sort of plant the seeds around that growth and potential that you want to transpire in 2025, where maybe the partnership or the situation playing out with partnership themes is somehow or could provide some level of opportunity for you around growth and potential. So just keep that in your awareness if that resonates. And lastly, we're really ending the month in April when Venus enters Aries on April 30th. So Venus will enter your Aries 8th house of transformational work, resources, including a partner's resources. Now, yes, Venus rules your second house of earned income, and it is in detriment in your Aries 8th house, which isn't always a bad thing. There could just be, you could be ending April and moving into May with amplifying themes around your own personal income and how much you want to invest in your financial future, your own self-worth, and sort of investing in any transformational work. So I think this might, Venus in Aries is that's a fiery Venus. It's I want what I want and I want it now type of energy. So I think whatever you're heavily desiring around transformational work, maybe increasing or creating more value to your resources, investments, assets even, that is somehow playing into, your own income, but also I think it could really be playing into your overall growth and potential. So whatever's really amplifying, especially at the end of April into May, around finances, transformational work, self-worth, it could all sort of amplify and support or generate more value to the growth and potential you want to unfold in 2025. Hello, Libra risings. On April 7th, Mercury finally stations direct at 26 degrees in your Pisces 6th house of daily work, health, and routines. So when Mercury stations direct, sort of hopefully creating more forward momentum around communication, plans, things that have transpired around work, health, routines, it will start to immediately form a conjunction with the North Node in this area, potentially creating an environment for an increased desire, alignment around a work situation, a health situation, and just general day-to-day routines that might require sort of rest, recharge, require a balance to sort of, basically creating a balance to the mind body. So really focusing on balancing the mind and the body as this goes direct and starts to amplify. Another thing to consider when Mercury stations direct and applies to that conjunction to that North Node, that increase point, involving themes regarding health, work, and routines, you could also think about how this is going to also align you to the growth and potential you really want to unfold in 2025. Then on April 12th, there will be a full moon in your sign. So a full moon in your Libra first house of the physical body, appearance, you independently taking action. So this could sort of culminate or close out chapters regarding something that's played out with your physical body, appearance, identity, how you want to show up in the world. So some of you might be sort of closing a chapter and being like, okay, I'm over it, sort of stepping into a new me. Or maybe there was a health or work situation and you're like, okay, I'm physically closing that chapter. So this full moon is particularly interesting because after it goes exact, 40 minutes later, the ruler of this full moon and the ruler of you goes direct in your Pisces 6th house of daily work, health, and routines. So for me, the first thing that comes to mind is what's potentially amplifying and maybe getting sorted out or creating forward movement around a health situation or really focusing on your overall vitality and well-being that is directly amplifying you stepping into a new chapter regarding your physical body and how you want to show up in the world. This could also signal sort of stepping into um, or aligning yourselves to more value in your everyday work. That could also have a profound, even positive impact on, how you want to show up in the world, who you want to be. Then on April 16th, Mercury enters your Aries 7th house of personal and professional partnership. Now, Mercury rules that 12th house of subconscious thought patterns, sort of what's going on mentally, even dreams, as well as that Gemini 9th house of growth and potential. So it could involve teaching, publishing, travel, higher knowledge, higher education, spirituality, where whatever's going on mentally and whatever is going on with any desires around growth and potential you want to take in 2025, it could really start to amp up in the area of personal and professional partnerships. So maybe there's more communication going on within personal and professional partnerships around your desired growth and potential, the direction you want to take in 2025, that maybe some of you have been sort of internalizing or sort of untangling mentally before you actually communicate it with the others in your life. Then on April 18th, Mars enters your Leo 11th house of friends, groups, communities, and long-term goals. So Mars is sort of kicking up a lot of action, maybe desires or motivations to socialize, to expand your social network, to really focus on or taking action around any long-term goals that could directly impact your finances, your self-worth, as well as your personal and professional partnerships. So some of you might be sort of getting out more, sort of taking action around surrounding yourselves with the right people that sort of align you to those long-term goals that could have a positive impact, yes, financially, but also to your self-worth. This could also sort of dissolve obstacles around surrounding yourselves with, the right personal and professional partnerships, or those personal and professional partnerships could serve the expansion of the social network and the long-term goals as well. It's important to note that when Mars enters Leo, it will start to apply to an opposition with Pluto in your Aquarius 5th house. So maybe the desire to expand your social network or surround yourselves with people that are aligned to your core motivations and desires in life, as well as the area of personal and professional partnerships that could align you financially or, support your self-worth. It could briefly require the balance, or it could create some intensity to the transformation in the area of children, if applicable to you, creativity, self-expression, romance, joy. So it could be a brief tug of war or this intense moment of, I'm changing the way I relate to joy, or I'm changing what brings me joy, whether it's through children, creativity, or romance. And that might create some intensity around, well, based off of this transformation or this area that I'm trying to empower myself in, how can that also be integrated and balanced with aligning myself to the right people that support the self-worth, that support those professional and personal partnerships I really desire in my life or already have and want to strengthen. So it could sort of create an intense tug of war moment, maybe situations playing out with your children and you really wanting to focus on your goals or your social network or vice versa. It could be a romantic situation. It could be your creative projects that, one area is pulling you in this direction and the other area is pulling you in this direction, and sort of how can you dissipate some of that intensity for that brief moment in time. Then on April 21st, Saturn will be conjunct the North Node in your Pisces 6th house. This is where maybe there's a new foundation taking place regarding your health, your work, your routines, where when this conjunction takes place, it could be the opportunity to strengthen or officially restructure your relationship with your health, your work, and your routines. But Saturn rules your 4th house of home and family, and also your 5th house of joy, and whatever brings you that intimate joy in your life, whether it's children, romance, creativity. So yes, it could have health, work, and routine in terms of like the foundational aspects of that written all over it, but this could also be tying in to your, like, maybe there's a living situation, relationships with family that could also support your health. It could also support your work. So some of you might be looking at, your living situation and sort of be really heavily looking at, does it support my health? Does it support my work, my routine? And does it support relationships with my children if applicable? Does it support my ability to step into more joy in life, enjoying life, whether it's through, again, romance, creativity, children, etc.? Additionally, on April 21st, we have a new moon in Taurus at 7 degrees. So with everything unfolding this month, we get this new moon in your 8th house of transformational work and resources. So some of you might be stepping into sort of a new relationship or a desired new chapter around your long-term financial goals, budgets, investments, assets, even a partner's resources, as well as any transformational work that might be playing a part in your life, if that's applicable to you. So I think this new moon sort of comes along and provides the ability to say, okay, despite everything that sort of transpired, how can you now create a new financial future where you can maybe create new goals or new budgets or desires around the financial future and resources you really desire. Again, if you're partnered up, if you're married, that might require or include the integration of your partner's resources as well. And lastly, we're really closing out the month when Venus enters your Aries 7th house of personal and professional partnerships, again, including marriage. So Venus is your ruling planet. It rules you, the self, and it's now in the opposite house of Aries, which is, the area of partnership for you. So this could honestly help a lot of Libra risings step into or integrate the I want what I want and I want it now type of energy. And the reason why I say it could really help some Libra risings is because Libra risings, you're known for your Libra rising, your Libra ascendant. So, poised, grace, beautiful, beauty, love, partnership, compromise. And when your ruling planet is in Aries, it could really help you step into, well, these are my needs. This is what's going to support my physical body, myself, how I want to show up in the world. as well as Venus ruling your 8th house, this is what's really going to support my transformation needed. This is what's going to support my long-term financial future, and getting very clear on that within personal and professional partnerships or the partnerships you want to attract. So I think all in all, this could really help diffuse the Mars-Pluto opposition, where it could sort of, yes, help you get more anchored in communicating or establishing what you really need within personal and professional partnerships, but it could help diffuse any obstacles around your long-term goals, your social network, and potentially create some opportunity to integrate more joy. So maybe for some of you, really getting clear and grounded on what you really need, what's really going to support you so that you can show up for other people. How can you fill your cup so that you can, be there for other people in your life? And by maybe having those, clear communication around what you really love and value, it could help create the opportunity to integrate more joy because the other person can understand where you're coming from. Or if you're out and about and you're meeting new people, you can get very clear on communicating those needs so you're attracting the right people into your life that support that. So I think the month really closes with, a lot transpiring, a lot amplifying in the area of work, health, and routines, but in a way where you can start to maybe increase your vitality, increase your health, get very clear on establishing long-term goals, who you want to surround yourselves with that could help make necessary changes to your financial situation, whether it's like your own individual finances versus your long-term financial future, as well as getting very clear on what you need foundationally. Like in order to create a new foundation, what do you need within the home? What do you need within those family or, people you live with type of relationships, as well as a way to sort of start integrating, transforming, and empowering more joy in your life. Hello, Scorpio risings. On April 7th, Mercury stations direct in your Pisces 5th house of joy. Now, the 5th house I'd like to think of is like more intimate joy and the things that provide us intimate joy, whether it's through romance, creative pursuits, projects, as well as children. So Mercury stationing direct in this area, it's going to immediately apply to a conjunction with the North Node. And this could start to amplify those themes, or maybe some of you might feel the desire to align yourselves to any of those themes, but in a way where it maybe supports or is also integrated within your long-term goals, your resources, your long-term financial plans, as well as any transformational work. So a lot of you might really start to amplify and focus on how do I integrate more creativity, self-expression, joy, romance, situations playing out with children where, I can sort of also integrate that and balance that with my long-term goals, my social needs, my social network, as well as, my resources, my financial resources. On April 12th, there will be a full moon in Libra. This is really illuminating your 12th house of the subconscious, your life vision, your dreams. So I would definitely pay attention to any dreams that have, that occur around this time. It might provide some contextual clues, but all in all, this is an illumination, a culmination of, maybe what's been going on mentally, what you've been untangling mentally, what has sort of transpired mentally, subconsciously, even through your own inner life vision that you have for yourselves that has transpired over the past couple years. where this full moon will go exact. And about 40 minutes later, Venus stations direct in your Pisces fifth house of joy. Again, children, romance, creativity, self expression. So, this could signal sort of the direct forward movement of maybe mentally untangling or getting very clear, being able to see your dreams, your life vision, your mental thought process, and how they directly impact or create tangible results to the area of joy, or being able to integrate more joy in your life. Then on April 16th, Mercury enters your Aries sixth house of daily work, health, and routines. Mercury's going to get a little kick, a little heat, some action behind it. So this might sort of kick up some more communication, even commerce, if that's applicable to you around sort of your work. This could also sort of kick up some sociability or some long-term goals regarding health, wellness, vitality pursuits, as well as maybe even investing in your work, investing in your health, and establishing really strong routines. Then on April 18th, Mars enters your Leo 10th house of career, business, and public recognition. So this is going to start to kick up more fire and more heat around those desires, motivations, even plan of action with your career, business, public recognition. Hopefully dissolve any obstacles around sort of any daily work, any side businesses, sort of work routines, those kinds of things, if that's applicable to you, as well as sort of help, by a trine configuration, sort of help create more flow to your personal income, your finances, and your self-worth. However, when Mars enters your Leo 10th house of career and public recognition, it's going to briefly start to form an opposition with Pluto in your Aquarius 4th house of home, family, property, and real estate. So the opposition could definitely, especially between Mars and Pluto, could definitely amplify a lot of intensity around this time, where you might feel like I want to take action. I want to focus on career, public recognition, where I can really support my work, my routines, my finances, my self-worth. But it might also require, a balance to home, family, property, real estate, life. So, whatever transformation or opportunity for empowerment regarding, home, family, property, real estate obligations, this could again briefly just create some intensity as things really kick up. Now, on just a very general mundane level, this could just feel like I'm being pulled in two different directions, and I really need to balance the intense action around, the focus on my career, my work, my social status, my public recognition, and also taking care of anything transpiring in the home, family, property, real estate department. Then on April 21st, Saturn will be conjunct the North Node in your Pisces fifth house, again, of joy, children, romance, creativity, self-expression. So this could definitely sort of increase desire or the foundation for creativity, children, joy, self-expression in your lives, where because Saturn rules your third house of your everyday environment, communication, as well as your fourth house of home, family, property, and real estate, some of you might really be focused on the home, the family, property, real estate, as well as just your day-to-day, taking care of appointments and, paperwork and communication and just those familiar things in your everyday environment, and really maybe focusing on the foundation or the restructuring of the foundation through home, family, everyday environment that's going to fully support your ability to step into creative pursuits, self-expression, children, expanding your family if that's desired, as well as romance. Additionally, on April 21st, there will be a new moon in your Taurus 7th house of personal and professional partnerships, including marriage. So whatever's going on, it seems like there could be a lot amplifying. And moving forward, yes, maybe with, career plans, as well as sort of restructuring or strengthening, any particular foundation in your life that could help, yes, integrate the joy, the creativity, expanding of the family, again, if applicable to you. That might also provide an opportunity to create a new chapter involving your partnerships, your close partnerships in your life. So whatever is transpiring, I think it could really set the stage for even a new way of existing or a new chapter within your partnerships. Or it could set the stage for attracting the type of partnership you really desire that is part of that foundation, and joy that looks like, that could really start to amplify in April. And lastly, we're really ending the month when Venus enters your Aries 6th house of daily work, health, and routines. So this happens on April 30th. So Venus rules your 7th house of partnership. It also rules your 12th house of subconscious thought patterns, your life vision. And I think this is where sort of, a lot could really transpire throughout the month, where you're sort of closing out the month and entering May, where you're trying to balance the mind and the body. How can I rest and recharge? How can I sort of give myself space to untangle sort of my mental thoughts that are coming up versus handling work, taking care of my health, my vitality? That could consequently also support the area of personal and professional partnerships. Hello, Sagittarius risings. On April 7th, Mercury finally stations direct in your Pisces 4th house of home, family, property, and real estate. So this could sort of create the forward momentum, especially if you have Mercury direct in your natal chart. But all in all, this could really start to increase home, family, property, and real estate themes. Because when Mercury stations direct, is going to start to apply to that North Node here, where things can become, there can be an increased desire, a hunger, an alignment, it's definitely at a point of increase. So Mercury rules your 7th house of partnership, and it also rules your 10th house of career and public recognition. So this could signal sort of the forward increasing themes around balancing home and family, changes or plans within home and family with career demands and also partnership demands. On April 12th, there will be a full moon in your Libra 11th house of friends, groups, communities, and long-term goals. So this is a major culmination and illumination around your social life, your social network, your long-term goals, that when this full moon goes exact by degree, about 40 minutes later, the ruler of this full moon, Venus, will also go direct in your Pisces 4th house of home, family, property, and real estate. So something could be really culminating around a dream, an aspiration, a long-term goal, again, your social network, that could also maybe integrate or play a part in your living situation or relationships with family as well. And then on April 16th, Mercury enters your Aries 5th house of joy, really the area of intimate joy. So what brings you intimate joy in your life? Maybe it's children, maybe it's romance, maybe it's creativity, self-expression. How do you create pleasure and joy in your life? And with Mercury entering this area, you could start to maybe make adjustments to career or personal and professional partnerships that allow you to communicate your needs around enjoying life more. So there could be, again, an opportunity for some of you to make adjustments to career and personal and professional partnerships to start to make time or communicate your desire around, hey, I need more time for my creative projects or joy or time with my children. So if that resonates, that could be an opportunity for you to sort of shift and make that adjustment needed. But it could also signal maybe integrating, for some of you, sort of the vice versa situation. It could also signal integrating more joy, creativity, and self-expression within your career, your business, your public recognition, as well as any personal and professional partnerships. So it can go both ways. And then on April 18th, Mars enters your Leo 9th house of growth and potential. So travel, spirituality, higher knowledge, publishing, teaching, really anything that you're pursuing or doing that creates growth and potential, or it's the growth and potential you seek. So Mars entering this area could really start to kick up the heat around, your core motivations, desires, and actions around, growth and potential, travel plans, things you want to do to sort of increase growth and potential pertaining to career for some of you. But this could also start to integrate and help the joy, the creativity, as well as sort of the subconscious thought patterns and life vision. So some of you might really be taking action towards growth and potential, yes, but in a way where it's aligned to sort of your life vision. It's aligned to the joy, the time with children, the romance, the creativity, the self-expression you really want to integrate in your lives. It's important to note that when Mars does move into Leo, it's going to start to apply to an opposition with Pluto in your 3rd house of communication, siblings, extended family, really anything, people, places, things within your familiar environment. So there could be a lot of transformation and opportunities for empowerment regarding your voice, your communication, any work that you do within communication fields. Social events, relationships with siblings, extended family, just your everyday environment that might require some balance to this drive and desire around the growth and potential. So there might be sort of, on a more mundane level, this could signal you maybe really wanting to take action and going forth with that growth and potential, those types of plans, the bigger picture in your lives. That might require you to also take care of mundane tasks, appointments, paperwork, sibling, extended family needs, familiar everyday task. And also, if you work in the communication field, it might require, that responsibility, that transformation to those fields that you're working on. So there just could be some brief intensity around these two areas that might just require balance before Mars starts to separate and move away from this opposition. But it's important to note. Then on April 21st, Saturn will be conjunct the North Node in your Pisces 4th house of home, family, property, and real estate. This could really signal the strengthening or restructuring around a living situation, a relocation, a renovation, relationships with family that could also play a part in restructuring and strengthening your finances, your self-worth, and sort of your everyday familiar environment and how you communicate with it. Then on April 21st, you will also have a new moon in Taurus. So as this restructuring or strengthening happens around a relocation, a renovation, relationships with family, it just looks like an opportunity to really amplify and strengthen the foundation of your life that, again, could consequently strengthen your finances, your everyday environment, But it could also give you this opportunity to create a new chapter around your routines, your health, and your work. And lastly, we're really closing out April when Venus enters Aries. So on April 30th, Venus will enter your Aries fifth house of creativity, self-expression, romance, children, really whatever really brings you the intimate joy in your lives. And although Venus is in detriment, I actually think this could be helpful because when Venus is in Aries, it can really help us communicate and establish what we really want. And Venus rules the area of work, health, routines, as well as social network and long-term goals. So I think for some of you, this could really help establish the work that you want to do, the health and wellness routines, the people you want to surround yourselves with, as well as those long-term goals, and how you can really integrate that and say what you really want regarding how to integrate those areas in a more joyful way, or really being able to unapologetically establish a new way of integrating the people you surround yourselves with, your work, your health and routines in a more joyful way instead of an arduous, sort of challenging way. So this could also help diffuse the Mars-Pluto opposition, in my opinion, because when Venus moves into your Aries fifth house of joy, it could sort of help dissolve by establishing what you really want around integrating more joy, it could consequently sort of dissolve any obstacles around the growth and potential you're really seeking in life, as well as potentially creating opportunities literally on your doorstep, literally within your neighborhood, within relationships with siblings, extended family, and your own talents or gifts around communication or communication fields. Hello, Capricorn risings. April 7th, Mercury stations direct in your Pisces third house of communication, exchanging information, really your familiar environment and people, places, things within that familiar environment. So siblings, extended family, neighbors, phone, car, laptop, all the things that sort of end up in the background within that familiar environment, as well as social events. So Mercury is going to station direct and immediately apply to the North Node here, really amplifying, increasing, maybe even aligning the situation that has played out with these third house themes. Now, Mercury rules your ninth house of growth and potential. So higher knowledge, spirituality, travel, publishing, teaching, really anything you're pursuing for more growth and potential in your lives, as well as your daily work, health, routines. So I think this could be an amplifying, hopefully aligning situation to sort of integrating the growth and potential you're really seeking, as well as amplifying themes of health, vitality, work within your immediate day-to-day environment. So I'm sort of seeing it as an opportunity to sort of go out in the world, grab hold of the things that you want and bring it right into your daily environment. Then on April 12th, there will be a full moon in your Libra 10th house of career and public recognition. So this is really culminating something, illuminating something around your career, your public recognition. Maybe some of you are sort of walking away from a career, starting a new one, or starting new projects, or a new way of sort of interacting or existing within your career, or your approach to your social status and public recognition. really roughly 40 minutes after this full moon goes exact by degree, the ruler of this full moon, Venus, will station direct in that third house of, again, communication, exchanging information, also your familiar everyday environment. So this signals to me that, yeah, maybe you're focused on work, health routines, as well as, growth and potential themes. But this could also be due to some situation playing out with your career goals, your public recognition that is really starting to amplify and maybe change for some of you your commute, your familiar everyday environment. Then on April 16th, Mercury enters your Aries fourth house of home, family, property, and real estate. So this could kick up a little bit of heat, communication, and action with people you live with, family members, really just general home, family, property, real estate themes. But again, Mercury rules that sixth house of daily work, health, and routines, as well as the ninth house of that growth and potential sector of your chart. So some of you might be looking at your living situation, people you live with, the foundation of your life. How is it supporting your work, your health, your routines, the growth and potential you're seeking in 2025? So some of you might start to sort of communicate more the needs, the plans, the directions, the desires around that foundation you really need in order to achieve the direction you want to take. Then on April 18th, Mars enters your Leo 8th house. So Mars is going to get a little bit of heat, a little bit of action. There might be some drive and desire in the area of transformational work or your resources, including a partner's resources. So some of you might really start to amplify the focus, the action, the desire around your long-term financial situation, your investments, your assets, your resources, and or any transformational work. Whatever the action that could transpire in this area over the coming weeks, it could positively influence that foundation of your life. Again, the home, family, property, and real estate as well. It's important to remember that when Mars enters this 8th house of transformational work and resources, including financial resources, it's going to create an opposition or apply to an opposition with Pluto in your 2nd house of earned income and self-worth. So this could be a brief sort of intense opposition or an opposition that creates more intensity around your financial future, your transformational work or self-worth, where you might really be heavily focused on your financial future, your resources, maybe your partner's resources or transformational work, but it might require a lot of balance with the transformation and even the empowerment that you really want to take place regarding your own individual income, your own gifts, talents, and self-worth. So sort of how to integrate what's mine versus what do I invest, what's mine versus, what's merged or shared with another. Then on April 21st, Saturn will be conjunct the North Node in your Pisces 3rd house of, again, familiar environment, day-to-day environment, communication. If your IC is in your Pisces 3rd house, this could also have home, family, property, real estate themes integrated within this. So a Saturn conjunct the North Node here could really help you restructure or strengthen your everyday life. Things within your everyday life. Now, Saturn is your ruling planet. It rules your physical body, how you want to show up in the world, your appearance. It also rules your 2nd house of earned income and self-worth. So whatever restructuring or strengthening that potentially you feel compelled to take regarding your familiar environment, appointments, mundane tasks, communication, exchanging information that might play into strengthening your everyday environment or relationships with people within your everyday environment. could consequently also, or hopefully, strengthen the financial area of your life and also strengthen your physical body, your appearance, how you want to show up in the world. Then on April 21st, again, so we have that Saturn conjunct North Node, but we also have this new moon in your Taurus 5th house of joy, really intimate joy. So things that bring you intimate joy, whether it's children, romance, creativity, self-expression, how do you enjoy life? And this new moon coming along in this area could really provide the opportunity to create a new chapter, plant new seeds regarding integrating more joy in your life, more creativity, more self-expression. So whatever changes to maybe home, family, your familiar environment that could consequently, I'm hoping, sort of restructure and strengthen your financial future, your physical body, how you want to show up in the world, could also set the stage for a new chapter where you can maybe incorporate more romance, more joy, more time with your children, more creativity and self-expression. And lastly, we're really sort of closing out the month when Venus enters your Aries 4th house of home, family, property, and real estate. So this could, again, Venus is in detriment, but that's a big scary word that isn't really that scary, to be honest. Planets in detriment can sort of like overexert themselves, but I think with Venus ruling your career and also the area of what brings you joy, this could help you sort of establish or really anchor yourselves in what you really need, what you really want regarding the home, family, property, real estate situation that is really going to set you up for success regarding not only integrating more joy in your lives, but also set you up for success career-wise. So maybe some of you are looking at your career, your public recognition. Maybe it's how to balance career versus home and family. Maybe it's looking at your career and you're like, maybe I want to work from home, or maybe I want to change my whole approach to home and family versus career. Either way, I think Venus entering Aries could really help you and all of us, want what we want and want it now, and sort of unapologetically sort of step into that energy around, for you specifically, the foundation you really desire that's going to fully support you, your financial future, your career, as well as integrating joy, creativity, self-expression. Hello, Aquarius risings. On April 7th, Mercury finally stations direct in your Pisces 2nd house of earned income and self-worth. So Mercury stations direct and is also going to immediately apply to a conjunction with the North Node. So definitely amplifying themes around finances, your gifts, talents, self-worth, but in a way where maybe it feels more amplified. It feels more aligned. There's more of a desire going on in this department. It's also important to remember that Mercury rules your 5th house of intimate joy. What brings you intimate joy? What is your heart's desire around this time regarding creativity, self-expression, romance, or children, if applicable to you, as well as any transformational work and resources that you might share with another. So yes, amplifying themes around finances, your gifts, talents, self-worth, but also integrating the resources available to you and what is really your heart's desire around this time that's playing into this financial situation, your own innate gifts, talents, and self-worth. Then on April 12th, there will be a full moon in your Libra 9th house of growth and potential. So this is a strong illumination, even culmination around spirituality, travel, higher knowledge, publishing, teaching, really anything that you're pursuing to create more growth and potential in your lives could really come into focus. You could really see something could be illuminated, or you could be, some of you could quite literally be closing out a chapter regarding something you've been working on in that department. It's important to remember that when this full moon goes direct by degree, about 40 minutes later, the ruler of this full moon, Venus, will station direct in your second house of earned income. So something, yes, is culminating in the area of growth and potential and those things that I mentioned around that, or really anything that you're pursuing for growth and potential. But that culmination or something around those themes could be playing into the forward movement that could create more value, amplification, and alignment to your finances, your gifts, your talents, and your self-worth. Then on April 16th, Mercury enters your Aries third house of communication, exchanging information, really people, places, and things within your everyday environment, which could include siblings, extended family, neighbors, car, phone, laptop. But if you work in communication fields or anything where you're really exchanging information on a daily basis, this could really put some heat and some serious communication behind it. Now, with Mercury entering your third house, I think this is where you could maybe start to have more conversations. There could be more, fire and action behind your words, your communication, how you interact with your everyday lives or within your everyday lives. That could also have an impact on your perspective on your resources, and also your perspective on creativity, self-expression, romance, joy. So some of you might be doing the vice versa of this and be looking at your resources, looking at your heart's desire, what is going to, bring you joy, and start communicating that within your everyday familiar environment to start that ball rolling, or really get it integrated within your everyday lives instead of looking at it as something that has to be separate from you. Then on April 18th, Mars enters your Leo seventh house of personal and professional partnerships, including marriage. So this could, honestly, for a lot of Aquarius risings, I think this could be a welcomed energy where Mars is finally out of that Cancer sixth house. So, hallelujah for many of you. But you could really start to feel more fire, more action, more desire and motivation in the area of personal and professional partnerships. That could also really create change and action to your career, your business, your public recognition, as well as your everyday environment and what's going on within that everyday environment. So I actually think that this could have more career themes involved in this, like professional partnerships that could create the desired change to, what you want to do within your career, your business, your public recognition, and also sort of help dissolve any obstacles that you don't want in your familiar environment. So I think partnerships could be a fuel source to create the change in action towards career, but also could provide the fuel source to dissolve any obstacles around, that maybe prevented you from sort of integrating the day-to-day environment that you really want to create around you. It's important to remember that when Mars enters your Leo seventh house of partnership, it's going to briefly start to form an opposition with Pluto in your Aquarius first house. So, as this heat and sort of desire and action starts to increase in the area of personal and professional partnerships, that yes, can create change and dissolve obstacles to maybe career, familiar environment, being able to communicate your needs, it might require some balance to the transformation and the empowerment regarding your own individual needs. So this could create some intensity for a brief period of time where you're really trying to create action within, personal and professional partnerships, career, day-to-day environment, and also not forgetting, your own personal needs and how that is also playing into empowering yourself, transforming yourself. That could also assist in creating the change that you really desire in 2025. Then on April 21st, we have Saturn conjunct the North Node in your Pisces second house of earned income and self-worth. So Saturn's been here for a while. It's nothing new, but I think this is where things start to really amplify and potentially provide an opportunity to restructure or create a new chapter or a new foundation. Yes, financially, using your gifts, talents, anchoring your self-worth, but really in a way where it fully supports your life vision. It supports your subconscious thought patterns, your need for rest and recharge, but also it supports that transformation, empowerment to your physical body, your identity, and how you want to show up in the world. Additionally, on April 21st, we have a new moon in your Taurus fourth house of home, family, property, and real estate. So whatever transpires regarding the themes that I've discussed thus far in April, I think you could be given an opportunity to create a new foundation, a new way of being within the home, whether that's a renovation, a redecoration, a relocation, or just establishing more sacred space with individuals you live with or relationships with family. So I think there could be a wonderful opportunity to sort of step into a new chapter and even a new cycle with the Venus cycles around, the home, family, property, real estate themes that really are going to set you up for success long term, but also support your growth and potential in your lives. And really, we're closing out the month with Venus entering your Aries third house of communication. Again, that familiar environment and people, places, things within that familiar environment, where Venus, yes, is in detriment, but detriment just means, in my opinion, just an overexertion, which could be a good thing. And I think Venus entering your Aries third house could also help sort of communicate and really anchor yourselves into what you not only love and value, but be able to communicate, I want what I want and I want it now, and sort of unapologetically owning, what you want to communicate, but particularly with home, family, property, real estate themes, as well as any growth and potential you're really seeking in 2025. So this could really help sort of unapologetically create or play into that new 18-month cycle with Venus, where you can start to communicate. And also remember, Neptune has just recently entered this area, sort of providing an opportunity to dissolve outdated structures, boundaries, systems of, communication, exchanging information. Venus comes into the picture and maybe allows you to see what you unapologetically want to communicate, the environment that's going to fully support you, your family, people you live with, your growth and potential. So I also think that whether it's positive, whether it's challenging, Venus entering Aries could help diffuse the Mars-Pluto opposition between your first house of self and seventh house of partnership. because when Venus enters Aries, it's going to start to sort of, in my opinion, diffuse obstacles within your personal and professional partnerships, including marriage, and potentially create opportunities for you to really step into that transformation and empowerment to your physical body, appearance, and identity. Hello, Pisces risings. On April 7th, Mercury finally stations direct in your Pisces first house of self, the physical body, really, your appearance, how you show up in the world. Now, I honestly think that this has very strong home, family, property, real estate themes written all over it. So this could be sort of creating forward direct momentum, or the initial start of it, regarding home, family, property, real estate themes and necessary changes that are sort of happening there that have a direct impact on you. This could involve personal and professional partnerships, including marriage. But I think when Mercury stations direct and starts to apply to that north node there could be an element of, what needs to change with home, family, property, and real estate that could involve the area of partnership that is really amplifying or maybe aligning a lot of you to what is really going to support you, what's going to support your physical body, how you want to show up in the world. So there could be, background themes of balancing your needs versus the needs of other, whether that's within a partnership or marriage, as well as making any necessary changes within the home, family, property, or real estate. On April 12th, there will be a full moon in your Libra 8th house of transformational work and also resources, including financial resources. So this full moon here could really illuminate or culminate a chapter financially, or it could sort of illuminate any transformational work if that's applicable to you. This also includes a partner's resources. So for some of you, this could be sort of the closure or, closing of the chapter or culminating moment around, finances, resources, shared resources. But what's important about this full moon is that when this full moon is fully culminated by degree, about 40 minutes later, the ruler of this full moon, Venus, will station direct. So to me, this is very significant because whatever's culminating in the area of your financial future, your resources, any transformational work that could involve a partner's resources is sort of indicating the forward movement or the direct movement in your first house of self. Again, applying to that north node. So whatever's happening, I'm hoping it is an alignment to, what is going to fully support you and create value for you. So again, it's important to note that with the Venus cycle, playing out recently, this could also play into a new 18-month cycle around, your familiar environment, how you communicate, your resources, even shared resources and transformational work. But for you, it's sort of coming together in this first house of self. So, what's going on with resources, finances that may be playing out with people you live with, family relationships, home, family, property, real estate, as well as, partnerships that need to be weighed into it. That hopefully things start to move forward and create more support for you individually. Then on April 16th, Mercury enters your Aries second house of earned income and self-worth. So this could kick up a little bit more heat and action around, your communication, but particularly around finances and self-worth. So, Mercury rules that 7th house of personal and professional partnerships, as well as your Gemini 4th house of home, family, property, and real estate. So this could kick up themes of really communicating in a very strong way your needs within the home, your needs to, really support your self-worth, your financial needs that could be playing out within personal and professional partnerships, but also, within the family unit, within the home, property, real estate situations playing out. So this could be tying in not only your self-worth, but also financial situations playing out that have to take into account personal and professional partnerships, as well as family or people you live with. Then on April 18th, Mars enters your Leo 6th house of daily work, health, and routines. So this can also kick up some heat and action to the area of work, health, and routines. This might feel a little bit better for the financial career sector of your chart and thus life compared to, the past few weeks or even past couple months. So some of you might start to feel a little bit better in those areas of life, but Mars is definitely going to maybe kick up health and wellness routines, work routines, even, sixth house, I think of like even side businesses. So if that's applicable to you, but all in all, it could, whatever's kicking up in this area could positively influence your finances, your self-worth, your career, and public recognition. However, it's important to remember that when Saturn enters your Leo 6th house of daily work, health, and routines, it's going to briefly start to apply to an opposition with Pluto in your Aquarius 12th house of subconscious thought patterns, life vision. So this could kick up a little bit of intensity around trying to find the balance between the mind and the body. The balance between some of you, but just might be, how do I rest and recharge and also take care of my, my work needs, my motivations and desires around expanding my work. So it could just be a very simple, how do I balance resting and also my health and my work? This could also indicate, if it's more deep or psychological for some of you, it could indicate the intensity around trying to balance the transformation and empowerment going on mentally with your mental health, aligning your mental thoughts to the life vision that you really desire, and balancing that with work and or health demands around this time. So there could be a lot playing out with trying to balance the mind, the body, work, health demands versus your own need for rest and recharge to align yourselves financially, but also step into the growth and potential you want in 2025. On April 21st, we have Saturn conjunct the North Node in your Pisces 1st house of self. So physical body, appearance, how you show up in the world. Saturn's been here for some time, but I think when Saturn finally goes conjunct the North Node on the 21st and around the 21st, you could really start to see the amplifying themes around maybe restructuring the foundation or stepping into a new foundation that not only supports you and your individual needs, but it also supports you mentally, and it also supports your dreams, your aspirations, and your long-term goals. So this could really sort of be an amplification, hopefully an alignment to strengthening the physical body, really creating that restructuring or strengthening of the foundation that you personally need in order to also strengthen the mind, strengthen your dreams, goals, and create that foundation that you can really build upon to achieve those goals and that you have your eyes set on in 2025 and even 2026. Additionally, on this day, on April 21st, you will have a new moon in your Taurus 3rd house. So with what transpires with everything I've discussed thus far, on the 21st, we have this new moon in your Taurus 3rd house of communication, exchanging information. Again, your familiar environment, people, places, things within that familiar environment. So this could be a new opportunity or a new chapter around, reorganizing, getting acclimated in a new environment, communicating and exchanging information in a new way within your familiar environment. But I think this could be an opportunity to sort of establish new goals, new ways of being, new ways of communicating with the world. And again, people, places, and things within your everyday lives. Then we're really closing out the month when Venus enters your Aries second house of earned income and self-worth on April 30th. So Venus is in detriment in your Aries second house of earned income, but detriment's a big scary word for really just overexertion, in my opinion. So what does Venus rule in your chart? Well, Venus rules that third house of everyday environment, communication, exchanging information, as well as your Libra eighth house of transformation, resources, long-term financial management, including your partner's resources as well. So this could be the start of a heavy emphasis or a heavy focus on sort of looking at your everyday lives, maybe looking at the organization in your familiar environment, communicating, exchanging information that might provide value to what you really want financially. But this could also be a time of really looking at, Venus in Aries is very, I want what I want and I want it now. So Venus in Aries could be sort of this moment for some of you where you start to look at your value and your self-worth in a very unapologetic way. And it consequently has a transformational effect on your long-term financial goals, your resources, your transformational work. So this could honestly help some of you establish what you really want financially. So it is by house trine your daily work, health, and routines, as well as your 10th house of career and public recognition. So some of you might be looking at your career, your work, and this might help you establish your real value, your self-worth, and maybe even stepping into being able to say, this is what I really deserve. This is what I really want to make. Or even some of you might be stepping into a new way of communicating within your familiar environment where you're actually sort of unapologetically being you, and you're stepping into your own innate gifts, talents, and most importantly, your self-worth.